In today's video, we are going to be breaking down how to install a super safety or FRT device, as well as some troubleshooting that you might have along the way. You can go down to the comments section and there will be timestamps so you can find exactly what you're looking for. The first step is obviously getting this gun apart, so punch your front and rear takedown pins and take the upper from the lower. We can put our upper receiver to the side for now. The first thing we need to do to get the super safety or FRT device in is take out our trigger group as well as our safety selector, and to do that we're going to need to take off the pistol grip. Most pistol grips can be taken off with a flathead screwdriver or a hex key, so let's go ahead and take that off. Once we take off our pistol grip, we're going to capture the screw as well as the spring. This is the spring for the detent for your safety selector. Do not lose that, we will need that for later. And we will set all that off to the side. You can catch your safety detent by giving it a little nudge there, and there is your safety detent. You will also set that off to the side. If you're installing a super safety, you will not need that. You will have a detent that comes with the super safety itself. It looks like this. It's got a flat end and a round end, but we will get to that soon. Next, you're going to want to take out your safety selector. If it's a mil-spec style selector, it will just slide right out as long as the gun is primed, that is. However, if it is ambidextrous, you're going to need to get a hex key or whatever tool necessary to get the right side off. We will take the safety selector out and we can set that off to the side, save that for a future build or whatnot, but we will not need it anymore. Now that our safety selector is punched out, we are going to take out the trigger group assembly. The first thing we're going to do is punch out the hammer pin, which is located right here. Whenever you punch it out, make sure you're holding onto that hammer when you remove the punch. There's your hammer. You can set that off to the side. There's the pin. If you are installing a super safety, you will need to keep this hammer. It needs to be a mil-spec hammer to interact with your modified trigger bar, which usually comes with your super safety kit. So keep that in mind and just put this off to the side. Next, we're going to remove the trigger pin. There is the trigger along with the disconnector and the pin. We can set these off to the side. If you are using a FRT, then you will not need any of those components, and from here you can simply drop in the FRT cassette trigger and then replace the safety selector. But if you're using a super safety, we'll have to go a bit further. So we're going to take the mil-spec trigger that was already in the gun. We're going to take our disconnector spring and our trigger spring. We can now take those same springs and put them on our new trigger bar. Once the spring is installed correctly, it should look just like this. Now grab our disconnector spring here. The wider part should be at the bottom. Just stick that into the recess there in the trigger bar. We will now grab the disconnector that we had from our mil-spec trigger. We will just drop it on there, making sure that this cutout on the disconnector is on top of that spring. Once you have it installed, you can give it a little bit of a function check. There we go. Perfect. Now we will move on to replacing the hammer. We will now reinstall the hammer. You want to make sure that the hammer spring legs are resting on top of the trigger pin, and you'll install it just like that. Once we have that installed, we could give it another function test. Make sure you put your thumb over the front of the hammer as to not mar your lower receiver. Steel on aluminum, steel always wins. So give that trigger a pull and a reset. Works perfectly. Now we can move on to installing the super safety itself. When you're installing the super safety, make sure that your hammer is back, and we are going to install the side that doesn't have a hole. As you can see, this side has a slot there. You're going to install the side without that slot through the left side of the receiver, just like that. And as you are pressing in, you're going to take your super safety lever here, and you are going to slide it in to that slot as you are pushing through. You want to make sure that your super safety lever, the hook part here, is facing backwards. So it will be oriented just like this. Should look just like that. It will rest right on your hammer. But since we don't have a detent, you will want to hold down on the safety from the left-hand side while we are reinstalling that grip. you're going to take your detent. There's a flat part and a round part. You're going to take the round side and stick it down into that detent hole right there. Go ahead and grab your grip again, along with the spring. You want to reinstall that spring right in the grip, and then bam, the detent is now pushing into the safety. Hold the grip in place and reinstall the screw. This could be a little bit tricky to do with two hands, but if your grip fits snugly on the receiver, you should have no problems with it. Once that is installed, go ahead and give it a function check with a super safety. The left-hand side sticking out means you are in safe. Nothing will happen. Completely over to the right means you're going to be in semi-automatic, just like that. And then centered, you'll be in force reset mode. So pull the trigger, hammer goes back. The bolt carrier is going to hit your lever here, which is going to force your trigger finger home. And then once the bolt carrier reciprocates back into battery, it's going to release your hammer. Now that we have our super safety installed, we can fit it to our upper receiver and see if everything is working properly. Make sure when you're putting your upper receiver on your lower that the lever is resting on the hammer, otherwise you can cause issues. Giving it a function check, the bolt carrier seems to be getting stuck in the rearward position. It's a little bit sticky. So we are now going to get into the troubleshooting portion of this video. There are many issues you can run into with a super safety or FRT device if you install it improperly or don't do the proper modifications. We're going to run over what those modifications are so we can get your FRT or super safety running smoothly. A very common problem people have with their super safety or FRT is their bolt carrier being stuck to the rear once they install it. And that is all because the arm or the lever on the FRT or super safety is impacting right here on the upper receiver. Basically, you have this lip here that isn't allowing clearance for the lever to fully go backwards, hence it is binding metal. The modification we're going to do to the upper receiver won't cause any structural degradation or hurt the gun aesthetically because it is going to be hidden once you put the gun back together. But if you are so inclined, you can put some AlumiBlack over the exposed aluminum. To do this modification, you're going to need a file. I would recommend getting a square file and a round file. Having these tools is going to speed things up exponentially. You can do it with a Dremel, but I would recommend a file. So first thing I'm going to do is obviously take the bolt carrier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the upper receiver here. I'm going to take my square file and I'm just going to press down with a little bit of pressure and go back and forth right on that lip. So you can really see that now. We're taking quite a bit of that lip away. We're now going to take our round file and we're just going to round off those corners. We've rounded off the corners. We've taken quite a bit of that lip away. We're just going to use some compressed air to blow out this excess aluminum or wipe what is ever left out. And then we're going to put our charging handle back in, our bolt carrier group, and function test with the lower. All right, we now have our upper back on our lower. We're going to give it a function test. And look at that, it runs perfectly. There is no snagging whatsoever. We'll do it in safe, semi, and then force reset. Works absolutely perfectly. Now, typically these are the only modifications you're going to need to make to the gun to get it to run, but there are a couple others that I will go over that I have seen in my experience when installing these devices. Another issue I've seen a lot of people run into is having a high shelf on their lower receiver. Now, while most manufacturers nowadays ship their guns out with a low shelf lower receiver, some companies, even ones like PSA, will occasionally send out a high shelf. But basically, you need a low shelf lower for the super safety to operate. If you do not, there won't be enough room for the super safety to go all the way back so it can forcefully reset your gun. If you do not have a low shelf upper receiver, it will not function and you'll end up with something like this. This is a sheared super safety lever. It will shear right off if it doesn't have enough room to go backwards and you try to fire with it. For our next problem that a lot of people run into, let's say you get everything installed properly, you dry fire it at home, everything looks fine and peachy, but you get it out to the range, and every few rounds, or maybe even every time you try to shoot in force reset mode, the gun does not function. You will have a closed bolt with a round in the chamber and a light primer strike. What is happening? Well, my friend, you are having an issue called bolt bounce, and that is basically the bolt carrier reciprocating so fast and returning home so quickly that your bolt carrier and bolt physically bounce whenever it returns home. To remedy that, it's really simple. You just need a heavier buffer or possibly an adjustable gas block. But this is the easiest solution right here. Most FRT or super safety companies recommend you run an H2 at minimum. Some will recommend an H3, but it is a fairly affordable fix. You just simply remove your buffer and replace it with a new one, and that should solve your issues. I wish I could say there was a solution that worked on every single AR, but I've seen some 16-inch mid-length guns require an H3 or an H2, or they'll just run on a carbine buffer. So it really just depends on the gun, depends on your gas port. So you're going to have to test it for yourself to see what works. If you're running an Atrius FRS or force reset selector like I do, you need to make sure that you have the proper trigger bar. This right here is a mil-spec trigger bar that you get in most of your kits, say something PSA sold, and you can see right here in the back that there is that groove. There is a U-shaped cut on top, that relief cut. Atrius FRSs will not work with a trigger that have this cut. You need it to be a solid block in the back. These are very affordable. Schmid tool, their Pro Line trigger is just that. You can get their trigger kits for less than $30 online, but you need to make sure that you have that type of trigger if you're running the Atrius. The next couple issues that I'm going to speak on are pretty rare. I've only seen them a couple times when installing these devices, but I thought that I'd bring them up just in case you ever had these issues. The first one is clearance for your super safety or your selector switch when you're installing these devices. Tolerances stack whenever you're installing all of these different parts from different manufacturers, and sometimes you will install your trigger, and when you go to slide in your safety selector, mind you, the hammer is back, you will see the trigger bar sticking up ever so slightly within that channel. That means you won't be able to slide in your safety selector, and you have to remove just a little bit of material from the back of your trigger bar right there. Take a file and just round that edge off. Go at it a few times. You don't want to remove too much, but function test it, and that is a pretty easy solution to get that working. And the last issue I will speak on today has to do with your safety selector channel right here. Whether it be a out-of-spec lower or an out-of-spec selector, sometimes you're going to see an instance where the selector won't fit in to the lower receiver. I found the easiest solution to this is taking a round file and gently going around the circumference of your selector port. Go gently and do not remove too much material. That will cause you even more issues, but if you do it properly, it should take just enough out to where you can slide in your selector. If you don't have any files laying around, you can take a punch and wrap some sandpaper around it, run it through the channel a few times to get that going. But either way, it is a problem I've seen, albeit a very rare one. And that is it for today's video. I hope that if you made it through the whole thing, that some of this information would be helpful to you. I've installed over a dozen super safeties or FRTs or FRSs, and there's just a lot of information that I compiled, and I was told by a few others that I needed to publicize this information because it may be useful to you guys. So I hope it was. Thank you for watching the video. Go ahead and give it a like or comment if you have any questions. I'm more than willing to answer any other troubleshooting questions that you may have. But other than that, God bless, and see you guys in the next video.